Have you ever felt like the harder you try, the further you get from what you want? Like you're swimming against a current that only grows stronger with every stroke? That exhaustion you feel isn't laziness. It's the result of fighting a battle that ancient wisdom solved thousands of years ago. What if I told you that the secret to your greatest productivity, your deepest peace, and your most authentic success lies not in doing more, but in doing nothing at all? I know how that sounds. In a world that worships the hustle, that measures your worth by your output, that screams at you to optimize every moment, doing nothing feels like surrender. It feels like giving up. But the Taoists discovered something profound over 2,000 years ago, something that modern science is only now beginning to understand. They called it Wu Wei, and it's not about laziness or passivity. It's about the most powerful form of action you'll ever take. Let me take you back to ancient China, to a time when philosophers didn't write in sterile academic language, but spoke in stories that cut straight to the human heart. There was a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying what terrible luck. He simply replied, "Maybe." The next day the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors congratulated him on his good fortune. Again he said, "Maybe." His son tried to tame one of the wild horses, fell and broke his leg. The neighbors lamented his misfortune. "Maybe," said the farmer. Then war broke out, and because his son had a broken leg, he was spared from conscription, while other young men marched to their deaths. The neighbors marveled at his incredible luck. And the farmer, wise in the ways of the Tao, simply said, "Maybe." This story isn't about optimism or pessimism. It's about something far more radical. It's about recognizing that your constant need to control, to force, to make things happen, is exhausting you because you're fighting the natural rhythm of life itself. The farmer understood Wu Wei. He didn't rage against the horse running away. He didn't celebrate prematurely when fortune smiled. He simply responded to each moment as it arose, without the violence of his own agenda crushing the natural unfolding of events. But what does this mean for you, sitting here right now, drowning in deadlines and expectations? How does an ancient farmer's wisdom help when your inbox is overflowing, your relationships are strained, and you feel like you're one bad day away from complete collapse? This is where the paradox of Wu Wei becomes not just beautiful, but practical. Wu Wei means non-doing, or effortless action. But here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean sitting on your couch watching television while your life falls apart. It means acting without forcing. It means being so aligned with the natural flow of things that your actions become effortless, powerful, and precisely what the moment requires. Think about the last time you were truly in the zone. Maybe you were painting, writing, playing music, or solving a problem. Time disappeared. Self-consciousness vanished. You weren't trying to be creative. Creativity was simply flowing through you. There was action, tremendous action, but no struggle. No inner voice criticizing every move. No exhausting mental chatter about whether you were good enough. That's Wu Wei. That's the state the Taoists spent lifetimes cultivating, and it's available to you right now. The Tao Te Ching, the ancient text at the heart of Taoism, says something that sounds completely absurd to our modern ears. The way never acts, yet nothing is left undone. How can nothing be left undone if there's no action? This is the paradox that will transform your life if you let it sink in. The greatest achievements don't come from forcing yourself against the grain of reality. They come from such perfect alignment with what wants to happen that your action becomes almost invisible. Let me tell you about 2 people I've observed, though their story could be the story of thousands. One person, let's call him Marcus, woke up every morning with a battle plan. He had his goals, his timelines, his strategies. He worked 16-hour days, drank coffee like it was water, and pushed through exhaustion because that's what success demanded. Every obstacle was an enemy to be defeated. Every setback was a personal failure. Marcus believed in force, in willpower, in the religion of more. And Marcus burned out spectacularly. His relationships crumbled. His health collapsed. The success he achieved felt hollow because he'd sacrificed everything that made life worth living to get it. Then there's Sarah. Sarah learned about Wu Wei during a period of her life when everything was falling apart. She'd been living like Marcus, and it nearly destroyed her. But something in the Taoist teaching resonated. She didn't quit her job or abandon her responsibilities. Instead, she started paying attention to resistance. When she felt herself forcing, pushing, grinding against reality, she paused. She asked herself, what is this moment actually asking for? Sometimes it asked for rest, and she rested. Sometimes it asked for fierce action, and she acted with complete commitment. But she stopped trying to make water flow uphill. She stopped exhausting herself fighting against the natural current of her life. The difference wasn't that Sarah became passive while Marcus remained active. The difference was that Sarah's actions became aligned with reality, while Marcus was constantly at war with it. And here's what happened. Sarah's productivity didn't decrease. It increased. But more importantly, her life stopped feeling like a battlefield and started feeling like a dance. Now, I can hear the objection forming in your mind because I had the same one. This sounds great for people without real responsibilities, but I have bills to pay. I have people depending on me. I can't just go with the flow when there are deadlines and consequences. This is the most important point to understand. Wu Wei is not irresponsibility dressed up in spiritual language. It's the opposite. It's the highest form of responsibility because it demands that you pay such close attention to reality that you can respond to what's actually happening, not to your fears, your ego, or your rigid plans about how things should be. The ancient Taoist master Zhuangzi told a story about a butcher who could cut up an ox with such skill that his knife remained sharp for 19 years. How? Because he followed the natural spaces between bones and joints. He never forced the blade where it didn't belong. He let the structure of the ox itself guide his movements. Another butcher might saw and hack, dulling his blade every month, exhausting himself with unnecessary effort. The master butcher achieved more by forcing less. This is Wu Wei in action. It's not about abandoning your goals or responsibilities. It's about developing such sensitivity to the grain of reality that you can achieve your aims with a fraction of the effort you're currently expending. Think about how much energy you waste fighting battles that don't need to be fought, forcing solutions that don't fit, pushing against doors that would open easily if you just pulled instead. But how do you actually practice this? How do you cultivate Wu Wei when every fiber of your Western conditioning screams that you need to try harder, do more, push through? Let me give you something practical, something you can start right now. For the next 3 days, I want you to conduct an experiment. Every time you feel strain, resistance, or the grinding sensation of forcing something, pause. Take 3 deep breaths. Then ask yourself one simple question. Am I forcing this, or am I flowing with this? You're not asking whether you should quit or give up. You're asking whether your current approach is aligned with reality or fighting against it. Maybe you're trying to have a difficult conversation with someone who's clearly not in a space to hear you right now. That's forcing. Wu Wei would be recognizing this and waiting for a better moment, not as avoidance, but as wisdom. Maybe you're working on a problem and you're exhausted, making mistakes, but you keep grinding because you think that's discipline. Wu Wei would be recognizing that rest is what this moment requires, that you'll solve the problem in half the time tomorrow if you stop forcing it tonight. Here's what the Taoists understood that we've forgotten. Nature doesn't force. Water doesn't try to erode the mountain. It simply flows, and over time, the mountain yields. The seed doesn't struggle to become a tree. It follows its nature, responding to sunlight and rain. You are not separate from nature. You are nature. And when you align with your true nature, when you stop trying to be who you think you should be and start being who you actually are, things become effortless in a way that still includes action, but releases the exhausting violence of constant forcing. The Tao Te Ching says, "When nothing is done, nothing is left undone." This is perhaps the most misunderstood line in all of philosophy. It doesn't mean do literally nothing and everything will magically work out. It means when you stop doing the things that don't need to be done, when you stop the anxious overthinking, the forced solutions, the exhausting pretense, the battles against reality itself, then what actually needs to happen can happen through you. Think about the difference between swimming with a current and swimming against it. Swimming with the current doesn't mean you stop swimming. It means your effort is multiplied rather than divided. You can travel 10 times the distance with half the energy. That's Wu Wei. You're still acting, often more powerfully than before, but you're no longer hemorrhaging energy fighting the current of how things actually are. Let me share another layer of this practice. For the next week, keep a simple journal. At the end of each day, write down one moment when you forced something and one moment when you flowed with something. Be specific. I forced the conversation with my partner when they were clearly not ready to talk, versus I flowed with my creative process by taking a walk when I felt stuck, and the solution came naturally. What you'll start to notice is a pattern. You'll see how much of your exhaustion comes not from the work itself, but from the way you're approaching it. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. Modern neuroscience is discovering what the Taoists knew millennia ago. When you're in a state of flow, When you're practicing Wu Wei, your brain shifts. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain associated with self-consciousness and overthinking, actually quiets down. You move into a state where action and awareness become unified. There's no separation between the doer and the doing. This isn't mysticism, it's neuroscience catching up to ancient wisdom. Athletes call it the zone, artists call it flow, musicians talk about losing themselves in the music. The Taoists called it Wu Wei, and they developed practices to cultivate it not just in peak moments, but as a way of life. Imagine living most of your life in that state. Not struggling, not forcing, not exhausted, just responding to each moment with the appropriate action, then releasing it. But I want to address something crucial, because this is where many people get Wu Wei wrong. It's not about being passive in the face of injustice. It's not about accepting situations that harm you or others. Wu Wei knows when fierce action is required. But even that fierce action comes from a place of alignment, not from ego-driven force. Think of a mother protecting her child. There's tremendous action, but it's not forced. It's the natural response to the situation. It flows from the reality of the moment. The ancient Taoists weren't passive pushovers. They were often the wisest advisors to emperors, skilled strategists, and powerful healers. But their power came from alignment with the Tao, with the natural way of things, not from ego-driven force. When you learn to distinguish between these two forms of action, your life transforms. Here's another practical exercise. Tomorrow, identify one area of your life where you're exhausted from forcing. Maybe it's a relationship that you're trying to control. Maybe it's a career path that feels like swimming through concrete. Maybe it's trying to change someone who doesn't want to change. For just one day, practice Wu Wei with this situation. This doesn't mean give up on it. It means stop forcing your agenda onto it. Instead, ask, what is this situation teaching me? What action, if any, is aligned with reality right now? You might be surprised by what happens. Sometimes Wu Wei means letting go of something that was never meant for you, and the relief is immediate. Sometimes it means taking action you've been avoiding because you've been too busy forcing the wrong action. Sometimes it means simply being with what is, without the exhausting need to make it different right now. The philosopher Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, said something revolutionary. By letting go, it all gets done. The world is won by those who let it go. In a culture that tells you to grasp, to hold tight, to never surrender, this feels dangerous. But what if the very act of grasping is what's preventing you from receiving? What if your white-knuckled grip on how you think your life should be is blocking the life that's trying to emerge? I'm not suggesting you abandon your dreams or stop working toward your goals. I'm suggesting that the way you've been taught to pursue them, through force, through grinding, through the exhausting religion of more, is both less effective and more painful than necessary. There's another way. It's the way of water, which seems soft but carves canyons. It's the way of the tree that bends in the wind and survives while the rigid tree snaps. It's the way of the master who achieves more by forcing less. Zhuangzi, another great Taoist master, tells the story of a gnarled, twisted tree. No carpenter wanted it because it was too crooked to be useful, but because of its uselessness, it was never cut down. It lived for hundreds of years while all the straight, useful trees were harvested. The teaching here cuts deep. Stop measuring your worth by your usefulness to a system that will consume you. You are not a resource to be optimized. You are a human being, and your worth is inherent, not earned. This might be the most subversive teaching of Taoism in our modern context. You don't have to prove your worth through endless productivity. You don't have to earn your right to exist through achievement. The very fact that you are alive means you are already participating in the Tao, in the great flow of existence. Your job isn't to force yourself into being worthy. It's to remove the obstacles that prevent you from recognizing you already are. Here's what I want you to try for the next 72 hours. Set a gentle reminder on your phone 3 times a day. When it goes off, stop whatever you're doing and take 60 seconds to simply breathe. Don't try to fix anything. Don't force yourself to feel calm. Just breathe and notice what's happening in your body and mind. This is the beginning of Wu Wei. This is learning to be with what is, rather than constantly fighting to make it something else. What you'll probably notice is how uncomfortable this is at first. Your mind will scream that you don't have time, that you should be doing something productive. That resistance, that discomfort, is your conditioning. It's the voice that's been driving you into exhaustion. And as you practice simply being for 60 seconds, 3 times a day, you'll start to notice something miraculous. You'll notice that the world doesn't fall apart when you stop forcing it. You'll notice that often, The best solutions come in these moments of non-doing. You'll notice that you are more than your productivity. The great paradox of Wu Wei is that by doing less, you often achieve more. But even more importantly, what you achieve feels different. It doesn't have that grasping, desperate quality. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your humanity on the altar of success. It emerges naturally from who you are, not from who you're forcing yourself to be. Let me tell you what happened to Sarah after she embraced Wu Wei. She didn't become lazy or unambitious. In fact, she achieved more than ever before. But the quality of her achievement changed. She started a business that felt aligned with her values, rather than forcing herself up a corporate ladder that led nowhere she wanted to go. She left a relationship that required her to be someone she wasn't, and eventually found love that felt effortless. Not because there were no challenges, but because the challenges were with someone who was actually right for her, not someone she was trying to force into being right. Her friendships deepened because she stopped performing and started just being. Her health improved because she stopped treating her body like a machine that needed to be driven harder and started listening to what it actually needed. Her creativity exploded because she stopped trying to force inspiration and started creating space for it to arrive naturally. This is what Wu Wei looks like in a modern life. Not passivity, not giving up, but a complete transformation in how you engage with existence itself. Now, I need to be honest with you about something. Practicing Wu Wei in a culture that worships force is an act of rebellion. You will be called lazy by people who are addicted to suffering. You will be told you're not trying hard enough by people who have forgotten that there are ways to achieve things besides grinding yourself into dust. You will feel the weight of conditioning that says, if you're not exhausted, you're not working hard enough. But here's what I've learned, and what thousands of years of Taoist wisdom confirms. The path of force leads to burnout, health problems, broken relationships, and a deep existential emptiness that no amount of achievement can fill. The path of Wu Wei leads to what the Taoists call effortless power. A life that feels aligned, where you're doing what you're meant to be doing, relating to people authentically, and contributing your genuine gifts rather than performing a role. Think about this carefully. What if your exhaustion isn't a sign that you need to try harder? What if it's a sign that you've been forcing the wrong things? What if your anxiety isn't a personal failing, but a natural response to living in constant misalignment with your true nature? What if your depression isn't brain chemistry gone wrong, but your psyche's desperate attempt to make you stop and reconsider the life you're living? The Taoists would say that all suffering comes from being out of alignment with the Tao, with the natural way of things. When you're aligned, there's still challenge, still change, still loss, but there's not that grinding, exhausting resistance. There's not that sense of constantly fighting against life itself. Instead, there's a quality that can only be described as rightness. Things feel right, even when they're hard. Here's your next practice, and I want you to commit to this for at least 1 week. Every time you're about to say yes to something, a commitment, a request, an opportunity, pause. Take 1 breath, then ask yourself, am I saying yes because this is aligned with who I am and what I value, or am I saying yes out of fear, obligation, or the need to prove something? If it's the latter, practice saying no. This is Wu Wei in action. It's not doing everything. It's doing what's actually yours to do. You'll be amazed at how much energy you reclaim when you stop doing things that aren't yours to do. You'll be shocked by how much space opens up in your life for what actually matters. And you might be surprised to find that people respect you more, not less, when you stop being available for everything and start being truly present for what's important. The ancient Taoists understood something that modern psychology is rediscovering. You can't think your way into right action. You have to feel your way into it. Wu Wei isn't a mental concept you intellectually understand. It's a felt sense of alignment that you cultivate through practice. It's developing sensitivity to when you're forcing versus when you're flowing. And that sensitivity develops over time, with attention. So here's what I'm asking you to do. For the next 30 days, become a student of Wu Wei. Notice when you're forcing and when you're flowing. Notice the quality of your energy in each state. Notice what happens when you release the need to control and instead align with what's actually happening. Keep a journal of your observations. Share your experiences in the comments below. Tell me what you discover about the difference between forcing and flowing in your own life. You might find, as I did, that almost everything you thought was necessary force was actually unnecessary resistance. You might discover that the exhaustion you've been carrying isn't the inevitable price of a meaningful life. It's the symptom of fighting against the natural current. You might realize that doing nothing, in the Taoist sense, is actually the most productive thing you can do. because it allows what needs to happen without the obstacle of your ego-driven force getting in the way. Lao Tzu wrote, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Look at how a flower blooms. There's no strain, no force, no anxiety, yet the transformation from seed to full bloom is complete and perfect. You are not separate from nature, you are nature. And when you learn to move through life the way nature moves, responding to each moment with appropriate action, then releasing, you discover a power you never had access to through force. This is the secret that the ancient sages discovered, and that modern culture has forgotten in its worship of hustle and grind. The most powerful action comes from non-action. The greatest achievements emerge from alignment, not from force. The deepest satisfaction comes not from conquering life, but from dancing with it. So I invite you to this practice, not as another item on your to-do list, but as a fundamental shift in how you relate to existence itself. Wu-wei isn't something you do, it's something you allow. It's the natural state that emerges when you stop fighting against life and start moving with it. And that shift, that simple but profound shift, changes everything. Tell me in the comments, where in your life are you forcing when you could be flowing? What would it mean to practice Wu-wei in your relationships, your work, your creative pursuits? What resistance are you feeling right now to this teaching, and what might that resistance be protecting? Come back in 3 days and share what you discovered. Let's walk this path together, learning to do nothing so that everything that needs to happen can happen through us. Because at the end of the day, the most productive thing you can do is stop doing all the things that don't need to be done, so that what's actually yours to do can emerge naturally, powerfully, and with the kind of effortless grace that the Taoists spent lifetimes cultivating. This is the awakening. This is the way. This is Wu-wei. And it's been waiting for you all along.